For more than 600 years, the scholars of the Galactic Union tried to unlock the meaning of a dead language discovered on the frozen world of Terrene 9. The language was found carved deep into the metal ruins of a structure that resisted every tool, beam, and field known to them. The glyphs glowed faintly even after thousands of years, whispering something ancient. Every translator, every linguistic AI, every telepathic species that laid their minds on it failed to make sense of it. The symbols had a rhythm unlike any other tongue in the galaxy. They seemed to speak emotion instead of logic, command instead of explanation, will instead of reason. The words repeated along the walls as though the ancient builders wanted them to echo through eternity. Many civilizations tried to claim the structure's origin. Some said it belonged to the builders of Dawn. Others said it was a weapon vault. Others feared it was a warning left by a forgotten empire. Then humanity joined the galactic stage. At first, they were dismissed as newcomers with short lives and noisy politics. But humans had something the older species found rare: persistence. They didn't stop until they understood. When the Galactic Council finally allowed humans to study the ruins of Terrene 9, the permission was symbolic. The older races thought humans would fail just like everyone else. But among the research crew was a human veteran named Daniel Hart. He was older than most of the scientists, with gray hair and a calm face marked by the stillness of someone who had seen too much of war and silence alike. Daniel wasn't a linguist, nor a scholar. He was part of the security detachment meant to keep the researchers safe. But as days turned to weeks, he spent time walking among the ruins. The alien scholars watched him with curiosity. He would run his fingers over the glyphs, whispering something softly to himself, as if he were listening for the stones to speak back. On the 10th day, the lead researcher, a tall avian named Rilto, approached him. "You look at the marks as if you understand them, human. Are you a linguist in disguise?" Daniel smiled faintly. "No, but I've seen those shapes before. They remind me of something." Rilto tilted his head. "Impossible. The language predates your species by millennia." Daniel didn't answer. He just kept staring at the wall. The curves, the slashes, the patterns, there was rhythm there, like marching lines, like the repetition of soldiers chanting in the cold night. He felt something familiar. That night, Daniel asked the human scientists for access to the holographic scans of the ruins. They hesitated, but eventually allowed it. He spent hours scrolling through the symbols, trying to make sense of them. Then in the quiet of the midnight shift, it struck him. The symbols weren't just words. They were structure. They were built like poetry. The next morning, he walked into the research tent carrying a small pad. "I think this isn't a language meant for trade or record. It's a memorial," the scholars blinked. "Memorial?" Daniel nodded. "These aren't instructions or warnings. They're remembrance. These marks repeat phrases with emotional rhythm, not syntax. It's a way of keeping memory alive through structure. It's similar to something we humans once had. Latin, old military oaths, ancient chants. They were meant to last longer than the people who said them." The room fell silent. The alien linguists looked at each other. "We have tried for centuries to find meaning in grammar," Rilto said slowly. "You suggest meaning is in cadence?" Daniel smiled again. "Exactly. You've been looking for logic. You should be listening for feeling." They followed his suggestion. For the first time, instead of feeding the symbols into translation algorithms, they used sound modeling, rhythm tracking, and emotional resonance simulations. The structure of the glyphs formed repeating emotional waves, rising, pausing, falling, then rising again. It resembled something like a song. When the computer reconstructed the first audible version of the language, the entire research team froze. The sound filled the air like a heartbeat echoing through eternity. It was deep, slow, filled with sorrow and pride. Some of the alien researchers found themselves trembling. Even those who could not hear frequencies below a certain range felt the vibration in their bones. Daniel listened in silence. When it ended, he said softly, "It's a farewell." Rilto looked at him. "You can understand it?" "Not the words," Daniel said. "But I understand the tone. That's the sound soldiers made when they buried their own." The team sent the recording to the Galactic Council. Within weeks, every linguistic institute across the stars was working on it. They confirmed what Daniel said. The language was not dead in the usual sense, it was ceremonial. It carried not information but spirit. They called it the lament of the forgotten. News spread across the galaxy that a human had unlocked what no one else could. But Daniel didn't care about fame. He returned to the ruins every day, sitting in front of the largest wall, tracing his fingers over the same words. One evening, while the light of the twin moons fell across the valley, Rilto joined him again. "You said you've seen something like this before," Rilto said. "Where?" Daniel looked at him. "Back on Earth at the memorial walls. Names of those who never came home. You can't read them without feeling them. You don't understand every name. But you know what they mean." Rilto was silent for a long time. "So the builders of Terene 9 left their own memorial." Daniel nodded. They knew they would vanish. This was their way of saying, "Remember us." Weeks later, Daniel found something no one else noticed. Beneath the main sequence of glyphs was a smaller line that pulsed faintly when touched. It reacted to human contact, not to any other species. The sensors confirmed it emitted a low frequency aligned with human brainwaves. When the research team gathered, Daniel stood before them and placed his hand on the ancient wall again. The light grew stronger, spreading through the lines like veins of living metal. The wall hummed and a deep voice filled the air. It wasn't a sound system. It came from the structure itself. No one understood the words. But Daniel closed his eyes. He could feel it, not with his mind, but with his heart. The vibration carried a message beyond words. It was gratitude. Then, in a trembling voice, Daniel whispered, "They're thanking us for remembering." The alien scholars stood speechless. The ruins glowed for a few more seconds, then went dark again, never to activate after that day. But from that moment, the galaxy changed its view of humanity. For centuries, the elder races had believed emotion was weakness, that understanding came through data and precision. Yet here stood a species that saw meaning in sorrow, order in chaos, and beauty in loss. Soon, humans were invited to lead the Intercultural Memory Division, a department dedicated to preserving ancient knowledge. Under human leadership, the project began uncovering forgotten relics, lost dialects, and emotional patterns in extinct civilizations that machines had failed to read. Humanity taught the galaxy that memory was not only data, it was feeling preserved in time. But for Daniel, the journey was personal. He continued working on Terene 9 until his last days. On his final evening, he sat again before the glowing wall, the faint hum still echoing deep within the stone. His assistant, a young alien named Tyler, stood behind him. "Do you ever wonder who they were?" Tyler asked. Daniel smiled faintly. "No, I know who they were. They were people like us. They fought, they built, they hoped someone would remember them." "Why you, though?" Tyler asked. "Why did it respond to you, to a human?" Daniel looked at the wall. "Because humans understand silence. We carry our dead with us, not as ghosts, but as lessons. Maybe that's what they were trying to tell us." After Daniel passed away, the council renamed the site the Memorial of Echoes. His name was etched beside the ancient glyphs, the only modern symbol permitted on the ruin. The memorial became a pilgrimage site for countless species who sought to remember their ancestors. And whenever someone placed their hand on the glowing wall, it responded with the same soft hum. Over time, scholars began noticing something remarkable. The more humans visited, the stronger the resonance became. It was as if the structure recognized the emotional frequency of humanity, the rhythm of their heartbeats, the sorrow of their songs, the courage of their remembrance. The ancient builders had left behind not a warning, not a weapon, but a bridge, a connection between the forgotten and the living. Humanity had been the key, not because of their intelligence or technology, but because they carried empathy strong enough to awaken memory itself. Generations later, human children would visit the site as part of their education. Teachers would tell them about Daniel Hart, the soldier who listened to stone and heard the voice of the past. And across the stars, whenever another ruin was found, cold, silent, impossible to understand, the first beings called to study it were humans, because the galaxy had learned something that day on Terene 9. They learned that knowledge can be stored in machines, but meaning is stored in hearts. They learned that some languages are not spoken with tongues or written with tools, but lived through remembrance, and above all, they learned that the smallest voice, the one that listens, not commands, can awaken the oldest echoes in the universe. In time, the words of the ancient builders were finally translated, not through logic, but through collective understanding. The phrase carved across the main wall was revealed to mean, "To be remembered is to live again." That translation became the motto of the Galactic Memory Network, founded under human guidance.